God. My name is Agnes Kafore of Justice, Peace, Reconciliation, and Creation Committee. That is JPRC. This is JPRC week. We have activities lined up for you, starting with land acquisition in Kenya. We have an expert on land issues who is called Vicky Madowo. Today we explore the legal processes and challenges of acquiring land in Kenya, whether inherited or personal land.
Praise God. My name is Vicky Madowo, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and I'm happy to be here to present to you the topic on land, how it's acquired, how you need to keep it, and how you can also lose it. So we are going to tackle all these issues herein. The relevant laws that guide or provides for acquisition, ownership, and protection of land is the Constitution of Kenya 2010. There is also the Land Act, and there is also Land Registration Act. For communities, there is also a law or an act called Community Land Acts. But on the subject of today, we are going to mainly focus on land between individuals and not communities, and how the same is acquired, and how the same ought to be kept, and how you ought not to lose it. So the legal methods of acquisition of land in Kenya are about 7, and we are going to tackle all the 7 of them to explain and expound those 7 methods. But first of all, let's delve into how this land is protected, or how the Constitution protects this right to acquisition of land. Article 40 of the Constitution of Kenya provides for protection of right to property and states that every person has the right, either individually or in association with others, to acquire and own property of any description in any part of Kenya. So land being a property, it is also in this context that a person acquires it and is assured that this right is protected as per the Constitution of Kenya 2010. So every Kenyan in any part of Kenya can acquire land, whether in Mombasa, Nyali, wherever they feel like acquiring the property. So the idea of acquisition brings about the element of ownership. So once a person acquires land, there is the element of ownership that is brought about in this acquisition. So it will be good to define ownership in this context of land acquisition. Ownership is defined to mean collection of rights, allowing one to use and enjoy property, including the right to convey it to others, like to transfer it to others. So once you've acquired land, your rights includes enjoying it, using it as you would want, and also it further goes to transferring the same, or even leasing it, that land, to other people. So you not only enjoy it alone, you can also allow other people to use that part of land, either permanently or in a period of time. Ownership can also mean, or it's implied, that the right to possess a thing, regardless of any actual or constructive control. In summary, the definition notes that ownership rights are general, permanent, and inheritable. So you are able to own it permanently, and later on you can also let it out, or once you die, your beneficiaries could inherit. So more or less, that's what pertains ownership, and in this regard, ownership of land. So when you own a property, or you have this land, you also have a right to sell it, right to possess it, right to lease, right to charge, whatever you want to do with the land. So these are rights that in furtherance of ownership. You don't only own it and you stick there that you own land in this specific place. You can do whatever you want to do with it by the virtue or by the fact that you own it. So by the fact that you own it also, you have the right to deter others from trespassing or coming in. Third parties that do not have right to that land, you have the right to deter them and to bar them from coming into that land. That is also another concept of ownership in the Kenyan law. So we delved into this bit of the legal methods that are recognized in the Kenyan context of how to acquire land. There are various methods, and in our discussion, we'll delve into various 7 elements on how to acquire land. The first one will be on the issue of government allocation. So the Kenyan government, as per the constitution, it recognizes that there are some individuals at some point that might be discriminated, or they might not be advantaged as the others. So in this regard, they might not have where to live, or due to wars or the particular community, they might not have where to spend the rest of their lives. So the Kenyan government appreciates that, and it comes out when it's recognized as by the Kenyan law that there is a particular individual or communities that do not have land. After the due process has been done, then the government could allocate land to them, especially the disadvantaged people. Another process of acquiring land legally in Kenya is through transfers. In fact, this is the most common way that most of Kenyan individuals or citizens are aware of, whereby person X owns land, and in the event that they want to sell it, they go ahead and do the process at the lands registry, which we'll delve into further at this when we've already discussed the various methods. We'll delve into the land buying process in Kenya. But the most common way that people are aware of is the transfer. That yes, person X owns the land, then thereafter they sell it to person B, then the process continues until the process of transfer to this person B, so that person B is the one reflected. The documents at the lands registry reflect that it's person B who owns this land that was previously owned by person X. So the most common ways is through transfer. Then there is also land adjudication process. This mainly concerns communities. There are various communities in Kenya. I will give an example by Kajiado. Yes, there were community-owned land there. So before the same could be subdivided so that each individual or each community could get their land, it wasn't possible when there was no law in that regard. But nowadays there is a law called the Community Land Act and the Land Adjudication Act, which provides the various provisions on how community land should be devolved so that each community or each individual have their share of the property. So the process that concerns that procedure is called land adjudication process. The other method that one can legally acquire land in Kenya, or the government itself can acquire land from individuals, it's referred to as compulsory acquisition. It's a process whereby the government or the state deprives or acquire any title to land or other interest in land for a purpose or for a public purpose. And an element that accompanies this process has to be that the person that the land has been acquired from has to be promptly paid. They have to be promptly compensated. So if at all today there is a road reserve that falls into the private property of person X, and the government feels like they ought to acquire that property so that the road is extended, then this person, before the government goes ahead to acquire the property, then it shall come with there's a committee that sits down and sees how compensation of the individual has to happen. So they will not go ahead to acquire the property before they come out with ways on how to compensate the individual or even the communities. A case in point in the Kenyan context is the standard gauge railway. Yes, there are families that are affected, there are communities that are affected. So once the government had acquired this property, it was ensured that each individual, each citizen was compensated, the individuals that were affected in that regard. Another method of acquiring property legally in Kenya is through settlement programs. This is more connected, or it's more related to the other concept that we had talked about of government allocation. So it relates to people who are who do not have land, or refugees, more or less, or squatters, families that are displaced. So also through the government program, the government decides to allocate them also properties so that their families also have where to live in. Another element or another method of acquiring land in Kenya is through transmissions. And transmission means passing of land, lease, or a charge from one person to another by operation of law, on death or insolvency or otherwise, or whatsoever. And it includes compulsory acquisition of land under any written law. So I will just give an example so that this is quite clear. So today, maybe person X owned a property, and maybe they had already sold the same to person B, and it's just that transfer had not been effected in favor of person B. So in the event that this person X dies and his property goes through succession, then after the succession process is done, all that this person B requires is the letter of administration or the court order that had administered the property of person X, so that at the land registry it is reflected that in fact this property belongs to them. So it's a process that happens after the death of the person who owns this property. Another example will be where they are joint owners of the property. Let's say a couple owned a property together, then one of them dies, then by law it automatically the property that this joint couple owned, once the one who dies leaves it automatically to the one who survives him. So that's how transmission happens in law. Another concept of owning property in Kenya, or how one can acquire property, is through adverse possession. Adverse possession comes about when a person trespasses into a land. A person who does not own a land totally goes into a land that is not his and stays there and uses that land which is not theirs for a continuous period of 12 years or more without any opposition or any interference by the owner, the registered owner. The registered owner knows very well that for sure this person is not the owner of this property, I'm the owner, but they let them live in that property or use that property. They do not have to live per se, but they use that property for more than 12 years. Then this person that lives there for more than 12 years without the interference of the other, if they approach court, then that right can be enforced, and they will be recognized as the owner of that particular property, because the registered owner in law is taken to have slept on their rights. It is an element that is it's diminishing in law, but it's still recognized. If the trespasser can still prove to court that for sure for 12 years they've lived in this property, especially if it's a home that they've built in the property, then the court will be convinced to grant them that right that they now are the legal owners of the property, and the registered owners will be cancelled. Now that we've tackled the bit of how to acquire property in Kenya legally, it is also good to point out ways of ensuring that one does not lose this property. You have your land, maybe the same was transferred to you by the seller that you bought the property from, or you acquired the same through inheritance by your kin who died. Whichever way that you got this property, how do you ensure that you keep it so that you don't, swindlers, there are many swindlers in Kenya, or people that do not have the right intention that will want to take away your legally owned property from you. So on this topic, or in this subtopic, we'll venture more into how you keep your property that you've already acquired, especially when now you've bought it. You bought this property from person X. How do you ensure that you keep this property? And more or less, in this idea, we will also discuss the procedure of acquiring land, especially the sale procedure. Today, I want to acquire land. How do I go about it? And what should I concern myself with so that I'm not swindled? I ensure that this land eventually is registered in my name at the lands registry. So the first important step that one ought to do when acquiring land in Kenya, it's important to do a site visit. You've heard that, yes, there is property in Syokimau that is being sold by a company or by an individual, or the same has been advertised, or a friend has confided in you that there are properties. Don't just rely on the word of your friend or whatever, whichever you got the information. It's important that you as a person, or by your duly appointed advocate, or any other person that you've entrusted these instructions on, especially a legally appointed advocate, to physically visit the property and see it by yourself, that for sure this property exists, and you've seen it and you've identified it, and in fact you've even talked to the owner himself while at the property. While at it also, it will be good to engage, other than the advocate, it will be good also to engage another professional called a surveyor to proceed together with you to the land, so that you are able to identify the various beacons, any other thing that will not be quite clear to you as a layman, that the surveyor himself, who has vast knowledge or is quite equipped in this area, will be able to point out to you in regards to the property. So while you're going there, it will be good also to go with a surveyor, because they are well versed in this area. Another important step that one ought to take in the process of acquiring property is to secure a copy of the title. You've been told that, yes, the properties exist, you've gone to the land, and you are sure that I've seen the land myself. So to ensure that you are engaging the rightful owner, or in fact the exact owner, that person ought to give you a copy of that title. You should not just rely on their word. A copy of the title ought to be given to you so that you verify for sure if they are the registered owners at the land registry. What apportionment do they have? Are there encumbrances? Are there anything that is hindering him from transferring that land to you? Or there is any charge? Is that property charged? Or is there anything that is happening in that property that will hinder him from transferring that land to you without any tussle? So it's good to have also a copy of the title, so that you verify all this. With the help of your advocate, you are able to verify through the copy of the title, and also the acreage of the property is also depicted in the title. So it's good to have a copy of the title from the prospective seller. Other than that, having done the two steps, it's also good to conduct a search. You've been given the title, you know the description of the property, maybe it's LR number that, 22, Nairobi. It will be good so that you verify officially, yes, this person might be having a copy of the title, but it might have changed hands already and you don't know. And it might just be having a copy of of a title which is not the current one. So it will be good after that to conduct something, a legal process that is called an official search. And this is done at the lands registry. You lodge it and you should be having a copy of that title. You should have the PIN number of the prospective seller, the ID number of the prospective seller, and the copy of the title. You will key in, it's an online process that with the help of your advocate you are able to do. You will key in those information that you will be asked at the portal. Then within 2 days, the search will come out so that you are able to verify that in fact, this prospective seller is the owner of that property, or it's another person, or if it's a company, it's indeed registered in the favor of that company that intends to sell that property to you. So official search is also a very pertinent step that one ought to do before committing themselves in buying a property. As we've already stated before, it's also good to still fortify that, yes, in this land buying process, it might seem that it's an easy process to conduct by yourself without any help of a professional. But as it turns out, it's not always the case. It's good to engage various professionals in this process, and that is an advocate, a duly registered advocate is good to engage him, and also a surveyor who will help you to identify the beacons, identify any issues with the land as per the maps, if it's reflecting the right acreage, what is it's the land at the lands registry is what is on the ground. So sometimes things might be different on the ground. So the surveyor will be able to help you identify all this before you commit yourself. It will also be good to fortify and state that it's good to engage with the actual owners of the land and not any other person. Yes, your sister might have told you that, yes, they bought the land, they get the company, or a friend told you, a friend of a friend, should not buy you to want to engage the actual owners. With land being an emotive issue, don't go or don't be swindled because you engage not the right person. So look for the actual owner of the land. If it's the directors, get to their office, get to ascertain that for sure this is the company that is selling the property, and get to have their right documents and their physical addresses and all that before you commit yourself. And you should also be aware that at the point where you are going to conclude the process, once you've ensured that all this is happening, you've done the search, you've identified the land, you've engaged the professionals, the deposit, the advocate has advised you that, yes, with this acreage of property, this is the right amount, and you've negotiated the purchase price. In fact, a deposit has been made, and you're almost exchanging transfer. The transfer is almost being effected in your name. You also have to be aware of the completion documents that will be given to you eventually once this process is done. So the advocate is better placed to advise you that in this type of property, because there are different types of properties. There is the freehold, which is agricultural property, and there is also leasehold, which is more or less land held by individuals, but eventually it will be reversed to the government. So the advocate will advise you that in this regard, with this type of property, the completion documents will be like the title to the certificate of title of the property. It will be land rates clearance certificate. It will be rent clearance certificate. It will be whatever. The advocate will be better, will advise you the particular documents that you will have at the conclusion of the sale. So don't go and be swindled by agents or people who are middlemen that will not give you the proper information, because at the end of it all, you want to have your property with you, you want to develop it, and you want to ensure that, yes, at the lands registry, it is reflected that you are the owner because you followed the right procedure and you have the proper documents, and you're even paying the right rates or rents depending on the type of the property that you're holding. So more or less, that is the procedure while acquiring land in process of when you buy it from a particular person. We also have to appreciate that other than the processes of acquiring land, you might also lose it. And they are legally, other than being swindled or fraud happening and you losing your land, there are other legally recognized ways of losing land in Kenya. And they include compulsory acquisition, which we already defined that when a government feels the need, or it's even proved out there that yes, there is need for the government to acquire property and your property falls as one of it, then the government will come in and notify people or the affected individuals of that need, take them through that process, and also before it affects that process of acquiring that your property compulsorily, it will also ensure that there is a committee that sits down and sees that by the valuation of your property, you should be compensated this much. So the government does not go ahead to effect or take your property before they come up with a compensation procedure. That is very pertinent in the compulsory acquisition process. Another method that is legally recognized that one can lose their property is through adverse possession, where we've discussed that if at all today you buy your property, let's say in Malindi, you live in Nairobi, but you buy a property in Malindi, and you take time, you don't even go to that property, you legally bought the property, but you've never done anything to it. But a person who lives near there observes you and knows very well that for sure this is not a resident here. Then they take that advantage. Then later on, after 12 years, maybe when you've retired, or now when you feel like you want to build your retirement home, is when now you go to visit the property. You find this other person who has already built, and they're staying there, or even their residential homes. You might not have a right to bar the person from continuing to enjoy the property because you relented on your rights. So it's good that when you've acquired a property, you have to take care of it. You have to constantly go visit it. You have to constantly maintain it. Even if it's not staying in it, put up something running in the property, put up somebody a caretaker to take care of it, so that nobody takes advantage of that and trespasses into the property. And later on, after 12 years, when they've stayed there and you've not interfered with them, it is recognized by court that, in fact, this person has taken over that property from you. So it's good to take care of where you've put your money, you take care of it. You don't let it go like that. There is also the idea of reversionary interests. This one applies to leases. We talked about freehold and leasehold type of tenures of holding land. So one can be having an agricultural property which is perpetual. You own it perpetually and nobody can ever come and claim it from you, so long as you have the right documents and you inherited maybe from your ancestors and all that. Then now that is your property forever. But a leasehold is more or less property held by the government, but it leases it to individuals for a maximum period of 99 years. So today, if you've acquired a property let's say within Nairobi, and maybe it had 25 years term, it's a leasehold, Then after 25 years, you have to visit the lands registry and the county council and renew that term of the lease so that it doesn't reverse back to the government and it allocates it to another person. You have to renew the lease so that it remains with you for another 99 years. The maximum years is 99 years, but if you bought it and maybe the years are expiring, you have to be conversant with that and go renew the term of your lease so that it doesn't reverse back to the government and gives it to another person. But also it will be good to note that priority will be given to the leaseholder. So if you are the person who's been holding the lease, because it's not practicable to evict someone who has been in a property for such a long time just because the lease period is expiring. Once you've become aware of that the lease term is expiring, then you should approach the lands registry and also the county council so that you renew the same, and priority will be given to you as the title holder. Another method of losing or how one can lose land legally is through surrender. Surrender more or less also related to reversionary interest, where a lease is surrendered back to the government. Yes, so it's an interchangeable term for reversionary interest and surrender. It's more or less the same. In conclusion, we'll say that yes, it is good to be on the lookout when you are acquiring property. You've bought property, you have to ensure that you are following the right procedure in acquiring it, and you also have to ensure that you keep it so that swindlers or people who are out there to get what they did not work for do not take away what is legally owned by you. So what we've given an example by adverse possession. So you ensure that what is yours, you keep it by taking care of it, and you don't let it out to strangers. To this end, we are glad to engage further with you, and you can find us in our website at info@madowoadvocates.co.ke. My cell phone number is also 0704-289-135. Feel free to leave your comments on the comment section so that you keep the conversation going and keep it alive. See you in the next episode where we can engage more.
As we come to the end of this informative video, we want to thank you for watching, and we believe that you have learned much on what is required when you are buying land in Kenya so that you don't lose your money. Our next video will be on will writing. You'll be guided on how and why to write a will, which is a very important document because it will guide your children and your dependents after your demise. It will make them fulfill your wishes. Please share this video with our friends and neighbors so that we have a community that is well informed on legal matters. Stay blessed.